Welcome to Mild Moodcast, a podcast meant to explore mental health through the lens of another human hanging on by a thread. I'm Bianca, a registered mental health counselor intern, soon to be LMHC, here to chat about the topics we don't get enough of. So grab your headphones and let's dive into the crazy world of mental health. It's going to be a wild ride. What's up, guys? Welcome back to another episode of Mild Moodcast. I am so excited about today's topic, if you couldn't tell by the smile in my voice. Redefining strength. How vulnerability becomes power. I hope you guys are having a wonderful Sunday. I actually just came back from brunch with my mom, sister, and nephew, and it was amazing. It's always amazing, but it's just nice to spend time with the people that you love. So, as always, while my podcast is meant to spark reflection and curiosity, it is not a replacement for therapy. If you're navigating heavy emotions or challenges, please reach out to a professional. Therapy is a safe space to process and grow. When you think of strength, what comes to mind? Is it physical toughness, emotional control, or the ability to keep going no matter what? For so many men, strength has been defined as the absence of vulnerability. But what if the exact opposite is true? In today's episode, we are unpacking what it means to redefine strength in men's mental health and spirituality. This isn't about tearing down traditional ideas. It's about expanding them to include the power of vulnerability, connection, and self-discovery. You know, from a young age, boys are often told to man up, toughen up, or flat out to stop crying. Strength is equated with silence, control, and independence. But what happens when that armor becomes too heavy to carry? Suppressing vulnerability doesn't make it go away. It just disconnects us from ourselves. And you may be thinking, if you're a woman listening, like, oh, well, maybe today's episode isn't for me. But I would encourage you to stick around and really listen. Hear this message, because everyone needs to know this information. We need to talk about it. We don't talk about it enough. So the more people we can get on the side of this info, the easier it becomes for people to do more than just man up, toughen up, or stop crying. For men to be seen and heard. Obviously, I can't make you stay, but there's definitely something in here for everyone. I want to talk about why this narrative is so harmful for mental health. You know, men are more likely to avoid seeking help for mental health struggles because it often stems from the fear of being seen as weak. In 2022, men actually made up nearly 80% of suicide deaths in the US. And that rate was approximately 4 times higher than that of women. Like, think about that for a second. Almost 80%. And it's difficult for them to seek mental health help. You know, there's a spiritual disconnect. There's a disconnect with everything, but the idea of strength as invulnerability also creates a gap in spirituality, because spirituality often asks us to soften, to surrender, and to connect with something bigger than ourselves. So what if we reframed that? What if being vulnerable isn't a sign of weakness, but a testament to your courage? It takes so much strength to say, I need help, or I don't have it all together. Vulnerability is like clearing the fog from a mirror. It lets you see yourself clearly. There have been a few instances, and actually a lot, honestly, but some instances in particular that come to mind for me when I think of vulnerability as power. Because we're trying to change that narrative, right? So I wanted to give you guys a good visual of what that might look like. LeBron James has a mentorship, and he's spoken openly about growing up without a father figure and how that shaped his approach to fatherhood and mentoring young boys. He's got an I Promise school, and that reflects his vulnerability and commitment to breaking cycles of hardship. Sharing his story highlights how his openness about struggles inspired him to create lasting change. Think of any man or boy in your life today. Do you want them to feel as closed off as you may feel? Or do you want them to feel safe to be open? And if you're open, but you notice they're not, how do we bridge that gap? Another one that comes to mind and might make you smile is Fred Rogers, Mr. Rogers. He consistently modeled vulnerability for young boys, for everyone, by addressing emotions directly and empathetically. Mr. Rogers' neighborhood, he taught generations of children, especially boys, that it's okay to feel scared, sad, or even angry, and that expressing emotions is a strength, not a weakness. And you may never have put that much thought into his show. You might have loved it, King Friday and all the characters, but his message was to help people feel seen in the way that they felt. Terry Crews, he's publicly shared his journey of overcoming toxic masculinity, childhood trauma, and finding emotional healing. In fact, he's emphasized how vulnerability helped him reconnect with his children, especially his sons, and set an example for them about emotional intelligence and authentic living. It takes a lot to look back over your life and go, I messed up. We were given these tools by the people who raised us, and sometimes just by our surroundings. So to be able to go back and work to do better, it's amazing. A few more examples. Programs like Big Brother, Big Sister. They often feature stories of male mentors who open up about their struggles and life lessons to guide young boys. For example, mentors who share personal stories about overcoming challenges create a safe space for young boys to talk about their fears and dreams. Dwayne Wade's advocacy and open support of his transgender daughter, Zaya, has shown a unique form of vulnerability. He's spoken about learning to let go of preconceived notions and embracing love and understanding. While this directly applies to his daughter, it's a powerful example for young boys to witness how embracing vulnerability builds stronger relationships. And the fact is, he catches so much heat for that. People look down on him for creating a safe space and being vulnerable and building a stronger relationship. And truly, my hat is off to him. There are countless unsung stories of male teachers and coaches who show up for young boys by sharing their own struggles, teaching resilience, and being emotionally available. I actually had an old coworker named Mr. Brown. I love him. The funniest guy that you did meet. He ran a group, and I'm pretty sure the name of the group was called Future Leaders of America. The boys would meet once a week and they wore ties and they learned to connect with each other. It was just amazing to watch them go from being these closed off kids to being open and having conversation and communicating the ways in which they felt. Vulnerability fosters resilience and emotional flexibility, which sometimes feels unheard of. From a spiritual perspective, many spiritual traditions teach us that strength isn't about control. It's about surrender. It's about being open to life, even when it's messy or painful. So you have this idea that being a man means controlling things. Being a man means being the head of a household, being the one who carries it all. But men have to be able to put it down too. Men have to be able to surrender, to be open to life, even when it's messy or painful. Mental health and spirituality aren't separate. They're deeply intertwined. Spirituality can offer men a space to explore emotions, purpose, and connection without judgment. Something to consider. What does it mean to feel spiritually aligned while honoring your mental health? How does vulnerability fit into your idea of spirituality? How can we create spaces where men feel safe to be vulnerable? Whether that's in therapy, friendships, or spiritual communities. So, here's an idea of how to start embracing vulnerability. The first step is awareness. Ask yourself, where am I holding back from being vulnerable and why? I want to give you some journal prompts. This is for my listeners. I'm not putting this in a document today. I'm just kind of saying these out. So if you want to write them down right quick, open a phone note or, put it on a piece of paper. What does strength mean to me? And where did I learn that definition? What's one area of my life where I could practice vulnerability this week? Remember that small steps make a big difference. You could start by sharing your feelings with one trusted person. And if you listen to my other episodes, I've said something like this before. A trusted person, not just any person. Someone that you feel like you can say these things to, who isn't going to steer you wrong, isn't going to make you feel unheard, isn't going to try to change the narrative. Another thing, replace self-judgment with curiosity. I tell my clients all the time I'm really big on self-acceptance. And self-acceptance means approaching things with curiosity. Why do I feel this way? And what do I need? Instead of, I shouldn't feel this way, I need to move on. Why do I feel this way? And what do I need? You notice that's not accusatory at all. And we have a tendency to be accusatory toward ourselves. Explore spiritual practices that encourage connection. Meditation, prayer, or spending time in nature. Sometimes you do your best thinking outside. Building supportive spaces. And this is honestly for everyone. Look for or create spaces where men are encouraged to be real. Whether that's a men's group, therapy, or even a conversation with a friend. I used to run a group that was called Batterers Intervention. And if my mom or my sister are listening to this right now, they're probably smiling thinking about it, because it was a time where I had a group. I think it was on Thursday nights. I think it started at 6:30, if I remember correctly. This is when I was a substance abuse counselor. And they were not there for substance. Some of them also were, but they were there because they were the people with domestic battery charges. Now, there was a curriculum for batterers intervention, and I followed the curriculum. However, I noticed a disconnect in my group of men. You could have up to 25 men at one time. And they would just feel so uncomfortable with the topics because they weren't connecting the way that they needed to. You know, obviously you're in a situation where you now have a domestic violence charge. The last thing you want is to hear somebody tell you what to do. So I thought to myself, these men don't feel safe to open up to each other. Because of course there's prompts and there's questions and you got to talk, and you do something when you come in every time. Kind of like if you go to an AA or an NA meeting where they have like something that you say, or like a prayer, for instance. And there was a moment of silence in one of the things for battered individuals, battered women. And as I looked around with this room of men after, first having the group, after it was given to me, I realized something really needed to change. They needed a way to connect with each other. Now, I always say that this was my most favorite group. You might be thinking to yourself, Bianca, how the hell was a group of men with domestic violence charges your favorite group? But honestly, they were just amazing human beings. If you can believe that, they really were. I changed the way that we started the group on Thursday nights. I made it open for each of these men to talk about what was on their mind. I told them, I said, I know that this is something that is court mandated. And I also want it to be a safe space for you, because maybe you don't have the ability to express yourself anywhere else. And one guy started, and another guy started, and eventually they all had something to say. And week in and week out, they would come in and they would first get whatever they needed, whether that was marital problems, work problems. I had one who lost his son while we were there, and by the time he had lost him, there was so much connection between those men that they showed up for him. They heard him. They allowed him to be vulnerable. He cried in a room with 25 guys. And the thing about it is, everybody was on different weeks. So once you hit your 26 weeks, you were done. You got to go. And some of them wanted to come back. They were like, would I be able to sit here? But because you could only have so many seats, we obviously couldn't. But it was such a beautiful thing to have these men have a safe space, because there was nowhere else in their life that they felt like that existed. And it encouraged some of them, as they finished, to go find groups in the community. And if I could do anything, truly, I would do a men's group. I would create one, because I watched it just become so transformational. I watched them change. And then as we would get into the topics of what we were supposed to talk about, they were far more receptive. It's like the lowering your capacity thing, taking things off so you can invite something else in that's positive. And I just encourage you to take some things off. Allow yourself the ability to express and let go, so that you can invite things that are so much more positive into your life. And I just wanted to share that, because it is my favorite memory of being a substance abuse counselor. And I think of those men all the time, and I wonder how they are out there in the world. And some of them, they weren't going to learn their lesson. Some of them were in some unfortunate circumstances. But a lot of them knew they never wanted to be there again. So yeah, create spaces where men are encouraged to be real. Some final encouragement. Redefining strength doesn't mean throwing away the old definitions. And hear that. It doesn't mean throwing away the old definitions. It means expanding them. True strength is being able to face yourself, your emotions, and your struggles head on. Vulnerability isn't the opposite of strength. It's the bridge to it. And the more we practice it, the more powerful we become. I want to take a second to truly thank you if you made it this far into the recording today. And I want to make my first request ever. If you guys don't mind, would you make sure that you are following this podcast and give me a rating? I think I also leave comments open, so I would encourage you to leave comments. Let me know what you think. Maybe even answer some of those questions that I said to you earlier if you feel like it. But if you could follow this, if you could rate me, and I'm not going to ask for 5 stars. I want you to honestly rate me and what you think this sounds like for you. I would just greatly appreciate it. Thank you for being here week after week. If it's your first time here, I love that this was your first episode. But either way, I am so humbled, so grateful that you guys even pop in to listen. Watching my numbers rise over these last few weeks has been sensational. Just sensational. There's no other way to put it. So thank you if you did that, if you took the time, amazing. And if, as always, if you ever have any questions, shoot them to me. Let me know. I hope you have a beautiful week. Bye, guys. Thanks for tuning in to Mild Moodcast. Remember, the conversation doesn't end here. If you have any burning questions or topics you'd like me to cover, don't hesitate to reach out. You can find me on YouTube at Mild Moodcast and Instagram at Mild Mood Therapy. Let's keep the conversation going and continue to explore the wonderful world of mental health together. Until next time, stay curious and keep smiling.